So Heath, you're standing in Arrowtown. What are the three main points that you're standing on?
My three main points coming from an Arrowtown perspective are the clean air that we have out there. So I'm quite passionate about cleaning up the air in Arrowtown. I think the fact that we have the worst air quality in Australasia on some evenings is just not good enough. I have a young daughter that's growing up out there, and I don't want her growing up with the health effects that are associated with poor air quality. That'll be my first one. Flowing on from that, my second is the water quality and the water supply out there. I also don't really think it's good enough that Lake Hayes is unswimmable on certain days through the summer, especially considering New Zealand's clean green image. And again, for the generations coming through after us, I think it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed quickly. And my third point, which is sort of more further afield than just Arrowtown, is the transportation issues that we have here in the basin. The $2 bus I think is fantastic. I think it needs to be improved and worked upon, and I think transportation as a whole, especially in the Wakatipu Basin, can be improved and should be improved just to help the economic situation and the quality of life.
What's your position on growth in a few sentences?
My position on growth in a few sentences? For me, it depends about what type of growth you're talking about. If you're purely talking about growth in numbers of visitors and residents, I think that's a very, very tricky thing to be pro. If we're talking about growth of the economy, then I'm much more for that, as long as it doesn't come at the detriment of the natural assets that we're the custodians over.
And airport expansion is a big issue. Do you have a firm position on that question?
I've been following quite closely in the media what's been happening around the airport expansion, both here and in Wanaka. It's a topic that I'm quite interested in. It's something that I've been not necessarily surprised to see the polar opposite views on. To be quite honest, I'm not across the detail of the pros and the against. Just talking about growth earlier, obviously a lot of people want to see more people coming to the district. A lot of people are opposed to people coming to the district. Is the airport a gateway for that? Certainly. But no, I think I need to know a lot more of the actual minute detail to make an informed decision on that.
Do you think tourism should continue to be our major industry?
Well, it's without a doubt that tourism is one of the main industries here. I mean, you only have to look around and say, you know, this is one of the most spectacular places in New Zealand and certainly in the world. So I think that needs to be used to the benefit and the prosperity of the residents here. Don't know, nothing else springs to mind that can really compete in the sort of import dollars that tourism brings to this specific area, but again, it needs to be managed well.
And finally, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what triggers your emotions about living in this part of New Zealand.
Okay, so I grew up down south on a farm just out of Gore. I studied in Dunedin and then qualified as a chartered accountant in Auckland. Then I travelled for 12 years. I met my wife, who's South African. We lived in the Caribbean together, and we lived in South Africa, and now I feel we've come home. Well, I've come home. She's enjoying the experience. We're starting a young family, and yeah, since I've been home, it feels familiar. And yeah, I just want to make sure that the Queenstown and the Arrowtown that I know is the same or similar, obviously future-proofed, for my daughter and her generation that's going to be coming through.